welcome to Boss Bitch Radio. I'm excited to have you on. I have interviewed Lana Dunbar. I'm a big fan.
Oh,
yes.
I've probably listened to that one. I love
Yeah,
Lana.
she was on my podcast. So I'm a big fan of your work. I've been following you for quite some time, your YouTube, your Instagram, and then obviously all of your amazing athletes. So I'm excited to have you on, talk some bikini shop. I'm a contest prep coach as well. So it's always fun to kind of get different perspectives, but I'd love to hear some more about where you started and kind of give us a little bit about your journey, because you have a robust amount of offerings. I did my research, and you have all kinds of programs. It looks like you have a giant staff. So I would love to know the Paul before this all started.
Yeah, I mean, so my story is, this career didn't exist 10 years ago. No one was like, hey, I want to be an internet coach. So my start was my own desire to be a competitor. So I think from the early age when I was a teenager, I was just obsessed with bodybuilding. I've got it right there. I've got the first book I ever bought called The Arnold Modern Bodybuilding Encyclopedia. Me and my best friend literally spent our entire summer before our senior year working out. Like that was it. I was hooked. I saw like one muscle. I think one girl that I had liked was like, oh, I can see you've put on muscle. And that was it. I was like, okay, this is for me. Fast forward, I was 32. I had played college baseball. I had a career. I was still obsessed with the gym. I always worked out, but I never had the idea of getting on a bodybuilding stage because I saw Jay Cutler and Ronnie Coleman and Flex Wheeler. And I was like, that's not me. I can't do that. Finally, at 32, someone in the gym was like, hey, you should do a bodybuilding show. And I was like, what are you talking about? And they're like, well, come to the show and see. So I went to my first ever bodybuilding show in 2007. And I just remember sitting there going, oh, they're normal people. They're not Jay Cutler. Oddly enough, Jay Cutler was the guest poser at the show. So I did get to see that side of the sport. That was the first time I'd ever seen a pro bodybuilder in person. And I literally went home and got on the internet and started looking for coaches. And I found a guy on bodybuilding.com that no one had ever heard of before named Lane Norton. And I said, hey, Lane Norton, would you coach me? And so he said, yes. And I spent an entire year preparing for that same show 1 year later. That's how my brain works, right? I had to know everything. I had to understand nutrition. I had to understand the training. So I said, I need a year. I hired a posing coach. I met up with a bunch of people that competed in bodybuilding in Orlando at the time and just kind of like dove into the sport. And
how old were you at this time?
I was in Orlando.
How old were you?
I was 32 when I did my first show. So 31 when I contacted Lane, 32 when I did my first show. And I think I was just at a point in my life where like I needed that next thing to sink my teeth into. I had a pretty good career. I had a bachelor's degree at the time. I was working in IT. Life was good. Like I had a great group of friends. Social life was amazing. I had girlfriends, like the social life was good. And I don't know, it was one of those moments where I was like, this feels right. I'm going to do this. I'm going to throw my hat into the ring. I stopped, I was playing like softball, volleyball. I was probably playing like multiple basketball leagues. I was just doing a lot of stuff. And I just stopped all of it and said, I'm just going to do bodybuilding for 1 year and see what happens.
Wow.
This is back when the forums were big, bodybuilding.com.
Yes.
I went on the forums. Yeah. And I literally documented, it's probably still on there. I documented every workout. I was making friends on there. Little did I know that this was kind of the future of fitness was like online stuff. Cause this was the early stages this is way before Instagram, way before YouTube fitness, any of that. It was literally like a couple guys being like, hey, I'm going to do this show. And we would show up and support each other. It was pretty neat. So after doing my first bodybuilding show, which I won, by the way, I was so excited. Amazing. Everyone in my gym thought I was an idiot because I was following Lane's advice, which at the time, no one had heard of flexible dieting. Yes. No one had heard of going into a bodybuilding show without taking diuretics or doing it naturally. Right. So I went to an NPC show and won bodybuilding for my class. I won the overall for the novice division as a natural athlete and didn't cut water and didn't do anything crazy. I just got shredded and showed up. And I think that's the first time that people started going, hey man, would you help me? Because my coach was doing this and and I was like, no, I don't do that. I was like, you need to reach out to Lane. And this is about the time that Lane really took off and he moved to Florida. So he and I actually became very good friends. I started helping him out with his seminars, and it got to the point the next year I ended up earning my pro card. I did my first natural pro qualifier, I earned my pro card in bodybuilding there. And it just kind of spurred it on. And Lane started hinting, he's like, hey, you should be coaching. You should be coaching because you just have this innate interest in the sport. So it actually kind of got the juices flowing. And I did end up taking a client that Lane suggested, a little, novice bodybuilder that I said, I'll coach him for free, but you got to help me. And Lane was like, of course, I'll help you. That went really well. He ended up winning his show, and he gave me $300. And my girlfriend at the time, my now wife, was like, you should start a business. This was like 2010 or 11. And I was like, I don't know how to start a business. Well, my wife worked for Chase, had a business background. And she's like, well, I'll help you. I'll get everything set up, but you have to come up with a name. So for a couple of days, I thought about it, and I came up with the name Pro Physique because I was a pro. And I thought the word physique kind of meant anybody has a physique. I didn't want to be like gender specific. I just said physique, yes. Right? So Pro Physique. So I ended up getting the prophysique.com name. I own the federal trademark, all the things, like my wife was a boss with that stuff. And that was it. I mean, I was off and running, and I was just riding that wave of online coaching becoming very popular. I was Lane's right-hand man. He definitely at one point became the most famous fitness nutrition coach in the world. He's since moved on to other things. He's not really doing like one-on-one coaching, but he was in my wedding. I was the best man at his wedding. We're great. Still very close to this day. We're still buddies. We actually, because of the hurricane the other day, he came, brought his kids and stayed at my house because he lives close to the ocean. So he brought so that's how close we are. We're still,
Now, can I ask you something real quick?
Absolutely.
When you started, so you had one client and a wife who had a whole lot of faith in your dedication and determination and had skill to help you get that business off the ground. How did that journey start for you? Like, how did you start getting clients and acquiring new athletes and things like that way back then?
I mean, it was all because of the reputation I built on bodybuilding.com, and then also my association with Lane. Okay. So Lane was basically getting overwhelmed with client inquiries, as many as 50 to 100 some days.
Wow.
And so he would tell me this, and I'd be like, well, I worked in a company where I understood the value of a lead, right? I understood, I actually went back to school to get my master's in business administration. And I was like, wow, this guy doesn't even realize the gold mine that he has right now.
Yeah.
He was struggling just to keep his head above water. And I'm just like, Lane, I actually said to him, I said, let me come work for you. Let me just manage your inquiries and take a couple clients. And he was like, well, why don't you just start your own company and I'll send you clients? And I was like, all right, however you want to do it. He regrets that.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Well, he and I, have these conversations. He's like, yeah, it would have been very interesting had you come on board. But it did turn into, me as a coach getting the real benefit of like someone like Lane, who had such a good reputation and was doing things in a very unique manner, backing me, which allowed me to then take it to the next level. I did not take that lightly. I actually went back to school. USF near me has an exercise science program. So I studied physiology and anatomy, strength and conditioning, kinesiology. I really wanted to have the right to be a coach. Elaine had a PhD, and I actually looked at doing a PhD, but by the time I got to that master's level, I was overwhelmed with work. So I just focused on growing the business. But that was like where it started. And then at some point I got a bikini competitor who was very well known. And I'll say this, women trust other women. Men, they don't care. Like, you can have a guy go win Mr. Olympia. He's not telling nobody about you. He's not telling all his friends. If you have a female competitor that was on a team and got mistreated, and then you take her on and she feels like things are good, she's going to tell every single person she knows. Yes. And so that's really what happened. It just started this tidal wave and Lane talks about it a lot, but it was really about taking bad coaching practices and changing the way the industry works. And, I won't mention some names, but those teams really don't exist anymore.
Can you give me some examples?
Of
like bad coaching. Yeah. Bad coaching practices.
Yeah. I mean, so the one team based here in Florida, they had the girls sign contracts. They weren't even allowed to say they were on the team unless they were approved. They had to wear a waist trainer 24 hours a day. They all received the same exact nutrition and training, no matter what division they were in, what they weighed.
Oh, goodness. Okay.
The protocols included making sure you're at the show, because at this show, we bring a lot of girls. So we're going to tell the judges the numbers. Like, there was just a lot of this stuff. The culture around it was scary. But what was strong about it was the community of women that supported each other. So although the practices were bad, they supported each other. And so I think that's where like that camaraderie comes in, where you get one competitor from that group, and it's a house of cards. If you're not doing things the right way, people are going to figure it out.
For sure. Yeah. So you acquired a bikini competitor. So you were coaching mainly men up until that point.
So my background was natural bodybuilding. I was competing in natural bodybuilding. I was competing in the NPC and natural bodybuilding organizations, but I was a natural athlete, was coaching people. And I never wanted to get involved in that. I am black and white. There is no gray area for me. So I was never going to be like, hey, you need to be taking this or you need to be taking that. And that always served me well. And I'm still that way to this day. So for me, it was very easy to like just make decisions on who I wanted to coach. I don't want to coach athletes that require that. That's awesome. I love that side of the sport. It's just not for me.
You're
Luckily,
talking enhanced athletes,
of course, and luckily the world has evolved, right? So now there are opportunities for people to get support. If you wanted to take testosterone or something that was prescription based only prior to 5 years ago, it was black market. It was the dark corners of the web, or a guy at the gym that knows a guy.
The biggest guy in the gym.
Right. Now you can
That's what one of my coaches told me. Go find the biggest guy in the gym. And I was like, I can't do that. Yeah.
And now you can literally speak to a doctor or registered nurse and do it legally and safely with blood work and monitoring. So I work with a company now to do that. But the evolution of me getting into the NPC and, the Olympia was my athletes just started winning. I would go to a show and my girl would win, and they would be like, well, the girls backstage, I guess, would talk and be like, I noticed you're eating and drinking on show day. How come? Like, she's not, well, that's what my coach's plan is.
Yeah. And
granted, like, listen, if it required the approach that they were taking to win, then I probably would have adopted that. Right. Luckily I just looked at the sport through fresh eyes. I had Lane, Dr. Joe, I had some really good mentors. So I've found what I feel is the absolute best way to coach an athlete, peak an athlete, and make sure that they are able to compete for their entire lives. It's not literally taking someone, starving them down, bragging about them getting a trophy, and then they have to retire or take 2 or 3 years off.
Yeah.
I want people to be able to seamlessly go in and out of prep. To me, that's success, not just a pro card. It's keeping athletes in the sport for a long period of time.
Yes, that's a really good point, which I have some questions on that in just a bit. But when you acquire, do you take new clients much anymore? Because I know you have like a YouTube and a whole host of a team of coaches. So are you working with a lot of coaches right now? I mean, a lot of athletes right now, one-on-one, or have you kind of scaled that back? You are.
No, I'm at my peak now for coaching because I've built an entire team around this business. And when I say I mean my wife and I. Along with our directors, we are a 40-person company with 30 of those people being coaches.
Yeah. All that amazing.
We have an IT staff. We have, marketing. We have everything. Like, we run a transformation challenge. Most of our clients are lifestyle. I focus on competitors. The majority of our coaches are not full-time prep coaches. That is a very demanding, unique job that I don't think a lot of people are willing to do.
Yeah.
There's a reason that I see the same 5 faces at every show, because that's the people that love doing what I do. So yeah, I mean, it took a little while to get there, because there is a point where you become more in demand than you can handle. But I really tried hard to listen to people that were my clients saying, hey coach, I don't like it that you didn't get back to my email today. I'd say, okay, that means I can't take on any more clients. Right. Because now I have a full-time video editor for my YouTube. Nice. I have somebody full-time uploading our podcasts. So I had the decision to make. Do I want to build a business or do I want to be the best bikini coach in the world?
Yes.
My goal is the best bikini coach in the world. And that goal means I can't do all that other stuff.
Correct.
And actually that allowed our business to grow even faster because I was in the way.
Yes. Yeah,
So,
I'm right. I'm right there. I just hired a podcast manager and a VA and all the things.
yeah.
Kind of the same, like, good problems to have, but you hit the ceiling and you're like, why am I uploading the podcast? Why am I editing? Why am I, uploading to YouTube? Like, because you're a one-man show and you're getting it off the road. But once you like pass the torch, it clears up so much mental real estate to be able to do what your expertise is. So yeah.
Yeah. And that's still my focus and still my goal. And I still wake up excited to go to shows. Like the day that I don't want to sit there prejudging for 16 hours for bikini is the day I stop going. And right now I love it.
So do you take new bikini girls on? So a fresh girl who has zero experience, wants to compete, wants Paul as her coach.
I mean, I basically review the inquiries and select people based on my criteria, which is, people I want to work with that are going to go to the certain level of the sport. I will say it's pretty rare for me to take on a novice or a true novice at this point. I've also recently found out that some of them are kind of don't want to reach out to me until they feel like they deserve to work with me, which I find odd.
Right. I get that. I've heard that too.
But I love getting a true novice because if I can mold somebody for their entire career, I've been to Raja's only coach.
Yeah. I have a couple pros like that for sure.
This is her 6th year competing. She's healthy. She's moving up the ranks. Obviously she's talented.
Very.
But, she has got no eating disorder. She's got no hormonal issues, so I tend to be most people's second or third coach. They've been put through the ringer and then it's my job to kind of fix them. Which I love that part of the job too. So it's really a case-by-case basis. Being at shows every weekend, I form relationships. So a lot of my clients will be like friends of people I coach. They'll be like, hey coach, so-and-so really wants to work with you. Would you speak to them?
Would you be willing to share what your like criteria is for that? What are you looking for usually? Like if you have a new prospect that comes through, really wants to work with you.
I mean, honestly, at this point, I'm looking for girls that I can take from novice to the Olympia. Right.
So genetics, relatively close to what would be a stage weight. So you're not trying to shave off 100 pounds.
I'm probably being pretty picky at this point. I want people that are going to be where I'm at. I'm going to be at nationals. I'm going to be at pro shows. I'm going to be at, some of the better NPC level shows. If someone comes to me and says, hey, I want to be the natural bikini champion of the world, I'm like, great, you're not for me.
Gotcha.
Because I'm not going to those shows. So NPC, national level, pro level competitors is really, my focus right now.
I love that. Now, what do you think a lot of misconceptions are when people want to get started with bodybuilding, specifically in bikini? I have a lot of bikini competitors or aspiring bikini competitors that listen to the podcast. What do you think some misconceptions are in the whole process and that people should know before they embark on something like this journey or start thinking about it?
I think the most important thing is to go to a show. I think a lot of people decide they want to do a show based on what they see on Instagram, and they've never actually been to a show. I've had so many amazing competitors come to me. I get on the phone with them and they'll be like, but I don't look like Laura Lee. And I'm like, have you actually been to an NPC show?
No one looks like Laura Lee.
Like Laura Lee.
Yeah.
She is the unicorn. So when you go to a show, you actually realize that the far majority of people look very average, and there's nothing wrong with that. But there's always at an NPC show one girl that stands out. That's our goal, is at the NPC level to be the one girl that stands out, or the two girls, or have a very good physique for that level. I think that's the misconception, is that you need to look like a future Miss Olympia your first show. Like, your first show is just setting the table for what's to come. And that's what this journey is about. It's not about coming out of the gate and winning your pro card. I can tell you, I've had so many girls win their pro card in 2 or 3 shows, and then they're done. And they always say to me, I wish I'd have had more shows.
Right. Because your amateur days are over and competing as a pro is an entirely different
beast. Have to travel. There's no more
categories.
Friends and family coming. Yeah.
Yes.
There's all one height.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but there's going to be 3 or 4 bikini Olympians at every show.
Absolutely.
So
yeah, my first pro debut, I was like, okay, I'm literally at the bottom of the totem pole all over again.
Yeah.
You know, you just have to get in that mindset. And it's really just, I think once you become a pro, again, it depends on how far you want to travel in bodybuilding and continue competing. Some people just want to get their pro card and be done.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with that at all.
Yeah.
And I support whatever their goal is, but the misconception, I think, at least with competitors now, because they're getting so much of their information from social platforms, social media platforms, they're like, you know, I have to sometimes, I'll be like, I had a girl, you know, I had a consult with one of my girls that just did North Americans, and she's like, I don't know, do you think I can do Amateur Olympia? And I go, here's the girl that won your class at Amateur Olympia last year. And she was like, oh. I was like, who do you think won it? It wasn't the Olympia, it was the amateur. Like, they get in their heads that they have to be beyond insane to even have the right to step on stage. And I'm like, no, like, each phase of your competition career should be fun. You should go to the first show and do true novice and novice and just see where you stack up, and then get your feedback. If you're a natural, maybe they're going to be like, hey, you should go to the next level or take a year or 2 off. I think, you know, if you want to like look at taking time off, you know, Ariana Brothers, who just qualified for the Olympia with me, she took 3 years off, no shows for 3 years.
What was she working on for 3 years? Just what the
life
were? Okay. Oh,
life.
well,
Yeah, like,
yeah.
so she turned pro in 2019. She did a local show in North Carolina, won the overall, went to nationals, won the overall.
Wonderful.
2 shows.
Crazy.
So she went to her pro debut a few months later, got her butt kicked, didn't get a call out, and just said, you know what, I need to go back to the drawing board. She took 3 years off, you know, lived life, and came out the gate this year and got 14th at our first show, second at our second show, won her third show. And then she got second to Isa Pacini, who was the Olympia champion the year she turned pro.
Incredible physique. Yeah.
But that's 3 years spent not dieting down. I think a lot of people diet too frequently. They're chasing the placing instead of chasing the physique.
Do you see that often once amateurs kind of get on a roll and they're trying to chase that pro card where they just keep competing?
Oh yeah. I'll be honest. Some of my competitors do it. I promise you, when you get third, second, and you're like 1 spot away, it's very tempting to go, okay, let's just go 6 more weeks and do another one.
Yes.
And sometimes it works out and sometimes it doesn't. So each case has to be kind of measured based on the caliber of the physique, how the person is handling things mentally, physically, hormonally. So I'll never say one approach is right or wrong. Every competitor that I see that starts to identify with their placings, like, I am a bikini competitor, eventually that's going to be trouble. So I just try to encourage them to like, think of this as a full process, not you need to be in prep all the time. That's not why people follow you. That's not why you're valuable. Yeah.
I love that. And that probably ties into a lot of your mindset coaching, which I saw on your website. I'm assuming.
Yeah, that's Danica. She is our mindset
that.
coach. Oh, I mean, the joke I make with my athletes is like, people think I'm like this, you know, contest prep coach. I'm more of a psychologist, you know, like the psychology of competing is so hard to deal with.
For sure.
You know, that coach, I'm 3 weeks out and I'm so flat and I look terrible. And I go, hold on, let's have a couple high carb days. You're going to be, but that comes from competing. Like, if you haven't competed and gone through that mental challenge yourself, the hardest part about competing is seeing the scale number go down and you look flat and you're weaker. You've got to push through that, because that's where shredded is where like athletes look great, but it's that tough part to get through. So the psychology of competing is, you've got to understand it.
Yeah, most definitely. Now, kind of tying into what we're discussing here, when you have a bikini athlete, because I get this question often, you know, how much should I be weighing on stage? How do you determine that? Is it just person specific? Are you?
Oh yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'll tell you I'll give you some actual numbers.
Okay.
And I don't even like talking about numbers because it's
Yeah,
going to make some people question their weight.
it does.
So my favorite is, last year I had a girl win her class at USA's. She's a natural bikini competitor. She won Class B at USA's and she weighed 101 pounds.
How tall was she?
5'1" to 5'2". That's Class B.
Okay.
So
101 pounds. Yeah.
101 pounds. That's
tiny.
Now she's on the smaller side.
Petite. frame,
petite, but great structure, beautiful lines, full round muscle belly. She's just a small, tiny person. I had another girl in 2019 when Class B at North Americans, she was 115 pounds.
Right.
Same class, same height, both turned pro. So it can be quite different. Obviously, the sport is becoming about an athletic, muscular S-shaped physique. So, I have very specific numbers that I will say, like, okay, if we go to, a national show and we're this weight, we're going to be on the smaller side. So there's ways to combat that. Let's come in a little bit leaner and be really full, be really eating into the show. Likewise, if I have girls that are a little more on the muscular side, well, maybe we need to come in a little bit flatter, pose a little bit more differently. The bikini division is very specific and you've got to fit the criteria. You can't put your own, well, I like the way I look this way. And it doesn't work that way.
Right. So when you have an athlete that could be potential for nationals, do you have parameters for that? Or is it just like, let's see, do you want them to win a few overalls? Are you wanting to, or you just kind of assess visually and kind of know from doing it for so long?
Yeah, I will say that I've gotten quite good at it. I can look at a girl and be like, damn, I'll never tell anyone like they're going to win, but I'll say like, I don't know who can beat you right now. Like there's just competitors that you see their structure, their muscle, they're beautiful. They like move well, that you're like, it's going to be hard for anyone to beat you. That doesn't mean Courtney King can't show up. Like there's people out there. So to me, it's about, I have a strategy for competitors that are going to nationals. Like if someone says, hey, I want to get my pro card, I definitely want to put them in shows where I'm going to get feedback from, the top 6 or 8 national judges, preferably Tyler and Sandy.
Yes.
Bill, Becky, the ones that are actually going to be also judging the national shows, potentially head judging.
Yeah.
And that's really the best way to get the feedback, and is literally have them get the feedback, make the adjustments, then go to the national stage. They come out under those lights. They're like, hey, this person listened. Now they're in the mix. Maybe they win, maybe they don't. But, now they're, at this point, my goal for all my national level competitors is first call outs. Beyond that, it's just a game of who's there that day and who's got the most talent.
Right. Yeah. Now, if you have an athlete that doesn't earn a pro card at nationals, do you usually try to continue to push for that year since they're ready? Or if their feedback is very minimal, maybe it's like posing or the tan was off, there's sometimes these little stupid things that come up and you're like, damn it, with your clients. Will you just try to push and kind of keep them show ready so they can hit another stage and potentially get a pro card?
Yeah. So the strategy around getting to the national stages, I always try to have multiple national shows as an option, right? It's not like a one and done situation. So for example, for all my masters competitors, we're going to run the gamut from Universe, Masters Nationals, and North Americans. Those are all within like 7-8 weeks of each other, 7-8 weeks, right? That's their season. The girls that I have competing now that are getting ready to compete, we're going to be doing Amateur Olympia, we're going to be doing the Ben Weider, and we're going to be doing nationals. Multiple opportunities, right? So same thing with the beginning of the year, you've got Junior USA's, Junior Nationals, and Universe back to back, right? So I try to give them multiple opportunities because I've had, for example, Rachel Saylor 2 years ago, she came out and got 5th, 3rd, then 1st, right? So
wow,
she got 5th at Universe, 3rd at the next one, and then she ended up doing USA's and winning her class, right? So you don't want to come out and get like 3rd at nationals and miss your spot by 1 spot, and then that's it, you're done.
No,
you're shut down until May. That's too long to stay in shape.
for sure.
So then so you definitely want to have multiple opportunities, but that's again comes with experience.
Yeah.
And you got to talk to the competitor about their finances, about their family life, like their work, like you got to know these things. So I try to take all that into consideration, present them with the options, and let them choose.
That's great. I think it's important. I talk a lot about involving your people, like your family and everybody, because I think a lot of times I get people interested in competing and I tell them, it's not that I talk them out of it, but I give them like, this is not going to be an easy road. Like this is a commitment. You're going to go all in, because I'm very much like you know, we have this goal and you have to be committed all in. I'm all in. Let's be all in together. And when the family isn't on board, that can cause a lot of friction and problems at home. So I think it's important for people to really have those conversations with their closest people in their life, because it is a huge undertaking.
So as a coach, I love meeting people's parents, you know, significant others, and, you know, I want them to have the buy-in. I love it. Like my client, Rianne, who just did North Americans, her dad, Roger, came to both her shows that I was at. And I was like, this is awesome. You know, like, you don't realize how many competitors compete in spite of support. So when I see it, I really encourage it. But yeah, I mean, that's another aspect of my coaching, that I want to be proud of what I'm accomplishing and not ashamed that I have to meet their parents and be like, oh, they must hate me. So, you know,
I get that.
It's like I said, I want to make the sport stronger. I want to make people compete for a lifetime, not just for a season.
Which is great, because the next question I had is, how does your off-season structure look like for your clients? Because I know some coaches are very different. What are your thoughts on the off season? Because there's a lot of controversy between coaches on Instagram, and like, do bikini girls need to bulk, and like, how much over stage weight should they be weighing in the off season, and all of those things. And I know there's a mixed bag of opinions, and I'd love to know what your thoughts are.
Yeah. I mean, the first and most important thing is what makes that competitor happy. Okay. So if she's competing at 110 pounds and she's not happy at 140, why would we ever get to 140? There's no reason for that. So I don't really have the issue with off-season body fat gain because of the way I handle prep. My competitors are eating more going into their shows than they were in the off season. That's the way I, you know, at the end of prep, I bring food up and cardio down, and we're cruising. So it's much easier to maintain a body composition that they're happy with. I don't think you need to be uncomfortable. So whatever that number looks like, I think the minimum weight I would say is about 10% over stage weight, right? So if you're 110 pounds on stage, you know, 120 to 125 should be pretty reasonable. But you know, when I have my check-ins, my clients are giving me scores. They're like wellness scores. So they're telling me what their stress levels are, what their hunger levels are, what their fatigue levels are. So even if I have a competitor on 2,000 calories, but they're telling me that their hunger is at a level 9, I'm going, okay, let's bump up the protein just so you don't feel so hungry all the time. Let's bring down the cardio. How is your sleep? What is your stress like? What is going on here? You know, so we want to make sure that we're creating a happy environment to put on muscle. It also depends how long they're going to be off stage for. You know, like if someone's going to be off stage for a full year, there's a little more wiggle room. If someone says to me, hey, coach, it's, you know, it's nationals or December, I just got second, I want to do junior USAs in May, we got to stay within 10 pounds.
For sure.
You know, you can't, it's not going to come off if you go up 20 pounds. Like, so, you know, these are tools, but I also find that athlete is a lot more adherent post-show. Your post-show goal will directly result in the response that your body gets, because if you tell yourself, I'm getting on stage in 90 days, you're going to treat it almost like prep, right? So I don't ever think competitors should get uncomfortable. That's never acceptable for me. I do think it's good for some athletes that have been run through the ringer, have been damaged and hurt. They're going to need to heal and gain more body fat than someone who's going into a show eating a lot of food and has no food cravings.
What's the most common thing that you tend to see post-show with just clients in general, like labs or, you know, any of these things that just where you're saying they like need more of a recovery period, like period goes away?
Even if I have the most perfect prep with someone, there's going to be some reduction in some of the thyroid hormones and testosterone for women hormones. But, you know, from my background in natural bodybuilding and the evidence-based approach to that, I was involved in some case studies and some research where we looked at the testosterone levels of natural bodybuilders going in and out of prep. And there is a natural ebb and flow. Yes, your testosterone, your thyroid hormones, those things do kind of come down, but they also come back up naturally, right? As your body fat comes up, as your calories come up, as your recovery improves. So I always tell athletes, don't go get blood work unless you're prepared to take something now. You know, so it really
have them wait.
But we've also uncovered with some people in the middle of their off-season issues, right? That in the past, without having a company like Aspire behind me, I couldn't have done that.
Right.
Things don't always make sense. It's like surface level, someone can be lean, eating a lot of food, but then you start prep and they can't lose a pound. And then you come to find out, oh, wow, they need some support here.
Yeah.
So I would say the norm is there's such a huge variation. How long was your season? How many shows did you do? How long did you stay? 10% body fat. Those are going to all impact that.
Mm-hmm. Now, with your athletes, are you using mainly a flexible dieting approach with all of your competitors, or is that mainly lifestyle? And then you keep them more meal plan with like some slight variations?
All of my clients are macro based.
Okay.
Now, I think there is this idea that flexible dieting and meal plans are not the same thing. That is not true.
Right.
Every one of my clients that is successful is on a meal plan.
Mm-hmm.
However, I'm not telling them it's 4 almonds, 3 asparagus spears, and 3 ounces of chicken every 3 hours. That's ridiculous. There's no reason why they can't eat 3 or 4 meals a day versus 6 or 7. There's no benefit to more small, frequent meals.
Right.
In fact, I think there's a detriment. Mentally, you're exhausted from trying to eat every 2 to 3 hours.
Mm-hmm.
You're not getting any satiety from eating those little tiny meals. There's no benefit to metabolism when calories are equal. So this is where the evidence-based approach of coming from like the background I did with Lane and Dr. Joe,
Mm-hmm.
People told me I had to be on 7 meals a day. And I'm like, sorry, I'm eating 3, sometimes 4. I will say I find the sweet spot is about 4 meals spaced out about 4 hours apart,
Mm-hmm.
maybe 5. But I find that if I'm having a problem with a client that's on macros, I'll say, okay, I need to review your meals. Let's look at them.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll say, oh, I see what's happening here. You're tracking this way. It's not actually accurate. Right. So, you learn to look for some trouble things. There's also some products on the market that are labeled as low calorie, but they're actually not. We've had some lawsuits with some companies that sell desserts or brownies and things like this. And if you can Google, like, information's out there. People have sent food to calorie labs and been like, oh, this was not what it was. So I do have an approach where I say, okay, if we're having problems and you're doing all these items, let's just bring it down to a basic meal plan, and I'll send them a meal plan.
Mm-hmm.
I'll say, do this for a week. And miraculously, they start dropping weight.
Yeah, they clean up a lot for sure.
Yes. So there is such a thing as too much flexibility.
Mm-hmm.
But I think as a coach, I've learned to identify that better. And I pay a little more attention to. So I do want them on a meal plan. I just don't want to dictate that it has to be some, ridiculously rigid plan that seems really technical when actually it's really lazy because everyone gets the same one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, when you have athletes, because I'm sure this happens to you, or clients that are, let's say, 4 weeks out, 6 weeks out, and they have what we call a snacksident where they go off plan, what is your philosophy / approach with that with your clients?
Yeah. I mean, a lot of it comes down to like the history. If it's their first time, I'll ask what the situation was. Were they stressed out? But I think the flexibility mindset, the real value there is that there's no real mistake because you can simply plan the next day to take in a few less carbs. The one thing I will never do is say, oh, okay, so you overate, we're going to add cardio. Yeah. That is a dangerous proposition. That is a slippery slope that person is then going to learn, oh, I'll just eat this cake and I'll just do more cardio tomorrow.
Yep.
Fast forward a few months, they're hiding in the pantry eating Oreos and just getting on the stairs every day. And they just learn this behavior. That's why we have mindset coaches and people on staff to help with that. But I'll say the incidence of that is very, very low, less than 1% for flexible dieters, because it's not just that we're flexible with our foods. We're flexible socially. We're flexible from day to day. We learn that it's not about being perfect. It's about being consistent. And so that it just changes the mindset. There's no good or bad foods. There's no good or bad days. There's just, data.
Yeah. Do you find that in the off season, if you have a client that is like, well, I'm not going to compete till, next year, that it's hard to keep them focused post show? I'm not sure what your strategy is. If you have like a reverse or recovery period, I know with my clients, I do a recovery, and I really try to say, like, I need at least about 8 weeks to just undo all the things we did for maybe 20 weeks or whatever. What is your process with that?
So my process, and this is something that is probably controversial, but in my opinion, if you wait till the show is over to reverse diet, you are going to fail. The only way a reverse diet is successful is if you, at some point in the prep, have brought calories up and cardio down for a week. I call it a diet break. I do that at least once or twice before everyone gets on stage. I also do my peaking protocol for most of my competitors is to walk food up the week of the show. So you got to imagine the mindset of a competitor. I'll pick on Laura Lee because we did 3 or 4 shows this year. Not Laura Lee Chapados, Laura Lee Musan, my client. We did 3 national shows this year. She placed in the top 3 at every show. Maybe she got 4th at one. Mr. Pro Card twice by 1 spot, but she's a phenomenal competitor. By our 4th show, she was eating 320 carbs and 80 fat a day.
Wow.
And she got 2nd at North Americans. So what does she want to do after the show? Not eat.
Yeah. She's full of
so
carbs.
We're 2 weeks past North Americans. She actually dropped a pound and she checked in and she's like, I could do another show. I'm burnt out. And I said, good. So what's her reverse diet? She's already done it. Like she's already eating more food than she was last off season. And she's just doing 30 minutes of cardio a day. So now I have to actually get her body weight up because she's still got kind of glute striations and stuff. So that's a dream scenario for me. That's how I want everyone to do. I want to do 3 or 4 shows. Every show we're bringing food up going into the show. And by the time we do that 3rd or 4th show, there's no longer that impetus to go out and eat. Literally a lot of my competitors at North Americans were like, I'm not going to go out. I just want to go to bed. I'm like, cool.
Yeah. That's great. Now, worst case scenario, how does that generally work for you if you have a client that's just super squirrely after where they're like, it's still,
don't get me wrong, I still have those.
For sure, where they're like, I need crumble cookie. I need to get all the things.
Well, and I still want people to have that, right? Because no matter how much food you get, there's certain, you just can't eat like really rich, like high fat, high calorie foods in prep. So yeah, go out and have those things. And, you've earned that. I never judge. I'm never going to be like, oh, if you were a real athlete or if you were a pro, the only morons that say that are the people that have never actually done a show, right?
Yeah.
You can't judge somebody. You got to meet them where they're at. And I'll talk real with them. I'll say, hey, listen, if this behavior continues for multiple days, you are going to have to just be comfortable with that body fat. It will not come off. If you can get back on track for 2 or 3 days, you'll come right back down. But if you continue to double your calories, it's trouble. So I try to just explain what's happening, and I try to give them tools. I think one of the best things to do is set the next goal. Their season ended. Let's say, okay, what's our first show next year? Let's target this show. Get them excited about the next season. That really helps the decision-making process. Also, let them understand, hey, I want you to go on dates. I want you to have a social life. I want you to go to the wedding and not track. I think it's important for people to learn the skill of not tracking their food.
Trust.
You get comfortable looking at a plate of food and knowing what it is. I don't weigh my food and track my food every day, and I don't have any problem maintaining weight, but it's a skill you learn. So, it's about, there's multiple layers to it, but the biggest one is having them ready for it. And then also giving them tools without judging them.
Great approach. I love that. Now, as a coach, do you have any pet peeves when it comes to clients?
Yeah. The biggest one is, hey, coach,
this is a safe space here, Paul.
Well, it's just funny because I just had a client message me, hey, I don't want to bother you, and I hear that
I'm going to bother you.
I don't want to bother you. And I go, you cannot bother me. This is literally my life. If I am here working, I want to be bothered.
That's what you pay me for. That's what I tell my clients.
And I think, they'll see me at a show or they'll think that, okay, I don't want to bother coach because he's at that show. But as you get to know me, I want all the data all the time. I want to hear how you're feeling and thinking. I don't want to wait until it's too late. I feel like I'm a master at psychology, physiology, nutrition. I'm doing things that no other coach was doing. Maybe they're doing them now. Anytime I see somebody use the word diet break, I'm like, yes, I brought that to the culture of competing. So like all those tools that I have in my toolbox, I can't use them unless I know what's going on with you. So you can never bother me. So that's really the only pet peeve I have is like, because then I'm somebody that's always concerned about how everybody else is feeling. So when I hear that, I think, oh gosh, did I do something to make them feel that way? I have to like unpack that and go, okay, what am I doing wrong? It's part of the reason I send a video to every single client every week, every update, because I want them to hear my voice and see me. And it's not just, hey, good job. It's, hey, I love the way you're looking this week. I see the shape change. So a little bit goes a long way. Especially coaching women, they would often, when I didn't do videos, say, are you mad at me? I'd be like,
because you're very brief with your
very
messages.
brief.
Yeah, that's how I am too. That's why I
Yeah.
do video as well. I'm like, otherwise you're going to think I'm just mad and I don't care.
I had a situation with a competitor in North Americans. I won't call her out because we're like really close. And I did all my check-ins. I think I had 16 athletes and we all did all our check-ins. And I had seen her the week before and she looked amazing. And I saw her at North Americans. She looked amazing. I was like, cool, we're good to go. Later that day, she's messaged me. She's like, Coach, I'm having a breakdown. You didn't give me any feedback. And I was like, oh shit. And it turns out she was used to me being like, hey, you need to work on this, this, and this. But she was so polished. This was our third show of the season that I was like, you're on. We don't have to do anything. But I didn't verbalize that. And that got her head. Right. So those are things that even I, to this day, I'm still learning, like, okay, everybody's personality is different. I've even had girls be like, Coach, you don't have to do this with me. I don't need your constant attention. I'm not one of those girls. I'm like, okay.
I do have clients like that, which is great.
I don't know that.
Yeah.
They're like, I'm not stressed out. Like, I'll get a message like, oh, Coach, my flight's delayed. I'm like, okay, here's the plan, this and that. Everything's going to be okay. And they're like, it's no big deal, dude. I'm cool. And I'm like, oh, you're like that.
Yeah.
But those are learned rhythms that you develop.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great. Now, when it comes to, I'm just about to wrap up so that way we can let you go. But what advice would you give to the novice bikini girl or the girl who's interested in competing, zero experience? What advice do you usually give to girls who are in that position where, like, I'm thinking about competing, I just don't know what I should be doing right now?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest piece of advice is go to the shows and see what the sport is about and talk to people. I think I was very intimidated early on going to shows. I wouldn't talk to the judges. I wouldn't talk to the promoter. I wouldn't talk to the athletes. And now looking back, I'm like, man, these are the people that get you and that want to help you. So go to the shows, make friends, talk to people. Whenever I do seminars and events, I say, look around this room. These are the people that get you. Everyone that you see here, you're going to see backstage at a show. You're going to see them at some event. You're going to see them at the Arnold. You're going to see them at some expo. You don't realize it. I'm 15 years into this competing lifestyle, and I'm still friends with the people I met at my first show, second show.
Me too.
The first Arnold I went to. Yeah, those are your people. So the first thing to do is go to a show, be around it. You may be like, oh, this isn't for me.
Correct.
And you may see girls walk out under those lights with their bikini and their hair and their makeup and their heels, and you might be like, holy shit, this is my life. This is what I want to do now, right? And that's the person that you want to become. You've got to get into it. You got to, look up seminars. Me, other coaches, we're always doing free posing seminars. The MPC does a workshop in January this year in Florida. There's probably going to be 1,000 competitors there. Wow. Go to these events. Approach. I'm good friends with Laura Lichapatos. I'm good friends with, all these girls are so approachable and friendly. Janet's show is this weekend. And I remember the first time Janet was like, the holy grail of bikini competitors when I first started coaching, and she was so quiet. And now that I've gotten to know her, I'm like, oh man, she's so awesome. But I never wanted to say hi to her or bother her. So there are going to be some personalities that probably you don't jive with, but put yourself out there, go to the shows, get to know the people, and you're going to learn a lot quicker than you would if you just kind of didn't say anything and just try to do it on your own.
For sure. So for these people who are like, I want to do this thing, are you an advocate of like, get a coach and just start the process going, or like train by yourself for a little bit, make sure you like the style of training? Because I think some people come to me and they don't realize the style of training that is needed for even bikini. They think they can just go do like Orange Theory and, and they've never done any weight training before. And that's going to be enough with like, maybe, like a body pump class or something like that. So I just like to be really real with people and let them know, like it takes it's a process.
Yeah. I think going to a show, and if you're really interested, seeing what the pro competitors look like in person, I think it's probably shocking to some girls how muscular they are in person. I remember the first time I went to a pro bikini show in like 2015, and I walked backstage with my clients and I was like, holy shit, that's pro bikini. I thought it was pro figure, right?
Crazy.
So yeah, I mean, if you want to compete, there are other smaller natural bodybuilding organizations that are going to have like 50, 60 people at the show. and it's going to be a lot less high level. And they're great organizations, and they have great camaraderie. The NPC is finely tuned. Their shows are very well run. Athletes show up ready to go. The judges, the promoters, the expediters are, I mean, they have turned the NPC and the IFBB into a well-tuned machine. I live in Florida, and I'm telling you, the change in the last 10 years has been immense. The quality of the shows is through the roof. So that can be intimidating, right? Whereas if you just want to start out, I tell my competitors all the time, find a little natural bodybuilding show near you. Go just get your feet wet.
Yeah.
And that can be a great starting, you know, they all have their place. Yeah, it's, you know, this is where the consult comes in. You know, we do our coaching consultation, and we'll talk to somebody, and I'll tell a girl right off the bat, I'm very blunt at this point. Like, listen, you've got what it takes to go to the Olympia. You've got what it takes to be a pro, or, you know, you're going to struggle to compete at the national level, just structurally, muscularity wise, you know, so that's being open and honest with competitors and meeting them where they're at is important. You know, so you got to find someone that's willing to do that. I'm sure there's a lot of coaches that are just like, oh yeah, I can do that for you. And they're interested in the money. That just depends on, you know, who you're talking to.
Yeah. So do your homework is what you're saying.
Yeah. It's hard to do your homework because there is this lens where they'll look at a competitor and they'll go, oh, who's their coach? That coach is not always the reason that competitor is where they're at. I often say, you know, I've been doing this a long time now, and a lot of the competitors are successful in spite of their coach. Yeah. Not because of their coach. There is a business aspect of this behind the scenes that goes on that is troublesome for me even to deal with. So I just stay in my lane, do my thing, let that stuff happen, and try to be transparent and put out a ton of information. That's why I try to do what I do, because I want people to see how you can do this sport. And I still have people to this day that are like, you can't turn pro with macros and naturally. And I'm like, I'm gonna win the Olympia doing all that. And, you know, is it possible for everybody? No, but that's what this sport is about. You know, you take someone with elite genetics, with elite work ethic, that's how you become Miss Bikini Olympia. It's not possible for everybody. Yeah. And if it was, it wouldn't be valuable. It wouldn't be what it is. Exactly. So, yeah.
Well, I love that. So thank you. This was great. I'm gonna be respectful of your time, but I'm very excited that we got to do this. So thank you for agreeing to come on the podcast. But I would love to let the listeners know, you know, where they can find you, what type of services that you offer, and we'll link that all up in the show notes and send everybody where they need to go.
I'd appreciate that. Well, I appreciate, and hopefully, Diane, we get to meet in person at some point. For
sure.
Are you going to be at the Olympia?
I'm not this year because of the Florida change. I'm in Cali, so it's a big trip to head all that way, but we've been hitting it up every time it's in Vegas for sure.
Well, I'll be in Reno with the Raja for the Legion.
I will be there. I have a pro competing there. Yeah.
Hey, Sunday?
Pro, so. Yeah. So I'll meet you backstage. So give us your Instagram handles. I know you have a robust YouTube page, a podcast, like give us all of the plugs.
Yeah. I'm pretty easy to find because my last name is unique. It's Revelia, Revelia. So Paul Revelia Instagram, Paul Revelia YouTube. I'm sure I have other ones. Those are my two main forms of communication. My website is prophysique.com. We do, you know, free coaching consults. And basically I have a administrator that she reviews every inquiry and sends them to the appropriate coaches. We have coaches with PhDs, masters in exercise science. I mean, IFBB pros, you know, there's me, you know, so it's basically anybody that reaches out to us, we kind of look at that inquiry and go, who's the best fit for this person? Sometimes it's me, sometimes it's not, just depends.
Okay. And then you have the podcast.
The Pro Physique code is just reached 1.5 million downloads. So it's actually doing well. Yeah. Yeah. And we do 2 podcasts a week. We do a prep one and we do a lifestyle one. And I'll have on special guests. Like I'm trying to get Brett Contreras back on, Lane Norton back on. I just did a podcast with Ariana Brothers after she got qualified for the Olympia. You know, so I try to bring people on, but my schedule has been so hectic. I'm doing a terrible job.
Well, I'm on that note, I'm going to be respectful of your time. I'm going to let you go, but thank you so much, Paul. Again, this was great. Lots of great info, and I'll link that up so everybody can come and find you. And I will see you on social and at Legion very, very soon.
Yes, I'll see you there. Thanks, Diane.
All right. Thank you so much.
All right. Bye.
Bye.